All right, for this pitching lesson, we're going to teach you about the lower half. I know you've probably heard it from your coaches many times. You got to use the lower half, but a lot of them don't tell you how. So this is going to be a deep dive into understanding the lower half and then how it applies into the rest of the movement. For improving velocity, this would be very supportive of you making big gains in velocity and also being able to do that without putting your arm at higher risk of injury. So this is a way to throw harder without the stress or out much added stress, ultimately reducing stress specifically if you don't use the lower half well. So key principles here, we love to use science. Science is a big foundation of the approach, and you're going to find the science in this method as you go through it, as you get into our training levels, our AI systems, and our educational material. You're going to keep learning about the science. And the science says about the lower half is that the two legs, and we typically pitch from one leg to the other. So we're never on both legs as pitchers. We're always either on the drive leg or the landing leg, and studies show the back leg pumps the energy in. So it's the leg that pushes the energy from the ground or into the ground pushes it back, and it pumps this energy in. We'll call the proximal segments, the core. And then the front leg, as we catch that momentum, that process, it then helps us pump it out to the distal segments. And once you learn how to sequence the kinetic chain from there, which we're really not going to get in this lesson, then you'll learn how valuable it is bringing that energy up. You know, Kibler and Chandler, another great scientific evidence around the lower half, said that if you lose that energy that you can build from the ground up, that kinetic energy that goes from the hip and through the trunk to the arm, if you lose 20% of that say you shut it down, you shorten your stride, or you land soft, or you just, you try to get your foot down quicker, you're going to have to overcompensate by 34% in the rotational velocity of the shoulder just to put the same force on the ball. So the energy that you can drive up is almost worth twice of what you can create at the end. And you got to think of the whip. You got to think of the whip, how a whip works. Where are you putting the force of the whip? You're putting it in the handle, in the bottom of the whip, just like the pelvis here, just like your legs, like is the arm of that throwing the handle of the whip. You're pumping that energy into the whip, into the core, and then that shooting and sequencing up to the end till explode out of your hand at the end. That's the goal here. So how do we do that? I do use tools. We have tools here like the King of the Hill. We have also the Stride Accelerator. So I'll show you these two tools and how they can help. And we have other tools as well, but these are two ones that we use a lot. And what we're going to do is we got to learn and teach the drive leg movements and the landing leg movements. So I'm going to go over that in the video, and then how we train that in drills and how we lift and how we work on mobility to make all that stuff work even better. That's in the programming, that's in the training with our programs. So initially, what we have to do is first we got to learn what pushes us off the ground, and that's the ability to flex and extend our leg. Pretty much this, right? Like a squat, like a jump, like a press, but obviously from a lateral position. The thing is, the leg moves the same way here as it moves out there. It's just we need some lateral stability to get it out here so we can move it that way. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to just push energy down and up. We want to push energy towards the target. And that's where most people fail. Most people fail to get into the position to move the energy where they want it to go, so they just forget about it and just move on to the arm. So how we have to do that is out of our leg lifts, we have to fall. We have to fall forward. And technically falling is down. So what allows us to fall forward is we do have to contract and activate the abductors, the muscles out here on the outside of the hip, to push us this way as we fall. So there's an initial activation of the pelvis as we lift to push us this way as we fall. And we want to fall forward and down at the same rate. And that's why I like to use the Stride Accelerator, because it helps me first go down and feel the position I want to get to. I'll turn it to you. I want to get into the position where this leg is here because I came forward and down the same rate. I get flexion here, as this is letting me rock into. I get flexion here, so ankle, knee, and hip flexor. We call that triple flexion. And I get this shin linear, something to my front hip. So when I create triple extension, ankle, knee, and hip flexor, it moves me towards the target. But it's more than just pushing. It's also rotating. And the rotational aspect of it is really what makes it complicated. That's why typically in our drills, you just learn how to drive first and throw, and then you learn how to fall, get in position, rotate, drive, and then throw. Because we make it a little bit simpler up front, right? So what actually technically happens to rotate is once you come out of leg lift and you fall forward and down the same rate, and you hit that perfect position of peak flexion, peak angle, linear angle, these feet will sync up. This will trigger rotation by opening, which is going to cause the whole thing to want to rotate. You'll pop up on your big toe, and then you'll push and extend and pop that plate to power rotation. So once you learn it, once you master it, pretty much looks like this. Okay, you get the pop, you get the drive, you get the hips open, and ultimately you learn to keep the shoulders closed. We'll learn that later in what we call hip to shoulder separation. So you can train that. You can train that first by getting on the stride accelerator, getting down, getting linear, and just pushing, kind of rocking back and forth here, okay? It's easier to when you start to actually start linear, right? Because you can sit here and drive, close your shoulders, drive and throw. And that's the sequence. That's like the whip. Throwing the handles, the drive, throwing the end of the whip back as closing the shoulders are separating, and then you let all that energy release, okay? So you can do it with the stride accelerator. You can go into the linear position, feet straight, shoulders closed, and do it on the king of the hill or just throwing off the ground and then throw. And then you start to feel what it's like to propel forward, and then you can put your foot sideways and you can work to fall, trigger rotation once this is linear, and let that pop into the big toe, power rotation as you stay closed to separate, and throw. And you can practice that movement. So like I said, it's simpler if you just learn it in a linear position and just learn to push first. Then you can do it in a lateral position, learn to rotate and push as you separate. And you have to separate to harness that energy, because if you're just driving and not separating, then you're throwing the sequence off as it moves up your body and it won't work well. From there, it's front leg. And then front leg is when I land, and I'm gonna do this linear again. When I land, I don't want this to move. I want this to lock down. And I want this to, as the trunk comes around, I want this to push back. So I wanna go from here at landing to here at release. If not, I might just keep spinning, right? So here at landing, here at release. And I can even practice that in a chest open position, which is easier, chest open. And then I can advance it to shoulders closed. And then I can do it without this. And I can do it in a chest open position. And I like to lift and drive, push back. And then I can do it in a shoulders closed position. Lift, drive, push back. All right, so just some basic concepts of back leg position and timing and sequencing, and front leg and position, timing and sequencing that I want you to play with and experiment with. If you want the tools help. But ideally, we have a whole training system where we break this down into parts. We also use med balls to first train this, because it's more challenging with the med balls and the baseballs. You can get lazy and just fly open with the baseballs. And then we work them into the baseballs. And as we start to apply these biomechanical concepts of driving to pump energy in, stabilizing, driving to pump energy out, we get that surge of energy coming up the body that makes it so much more easy to get energy, more energy to the ball, and so much more healthier because we don't have to crank on the arm to do it. And we get what we said we were going to get. We get a big increase in velocity, and we do it without putting the arm at risk. So if you want to learn more about that, check out down below more about our training programs, more about our tools. And I hope that helps. Love to hear your comments. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We're here to help, and look forward to get you into the programs.